Hello there, my name is Zoe Hunt. Welcome to Flute Talks. I'm a director at large of the EFA, and today I am speaking with Liz, the Principal Flutist of the ESO. Hello, Liz, how are you?
I'm fine, Zoe. Thank you for asking me to Flute Talks. I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent. I was reading your bio of the ESO, and it says that you're originally from Philadelphia. Is that right?
I grew up in a suburb just to the northwest of Philadelphia. So yes, that's where I had all my musical early training.
Okay, so you started flute in Philadelphia, around that state then.
Yes, so in my elementary school, all the kids learned recorder in grade 4, but my family was on my father's sabbatical for that year, so we were out of the country. So I never learned recorder. We returned to the U.S. on the first day of my grade 5. So I wasn't in school on that day, and that was the day that everyone chose their instrument if they were going to continue on with an instrument. Mm-hmm. So when I got to school on the second day, my two best friends had chosen flute. So of course, what was I going to do? I chose flute because I wanted to be with them.
Good choice. Awesome. Yeah. So your father was on sabbatical. He was a professor, was he, or?
He was a professor of astronomy at the University of Pennsylvania.
Oh my goodness, of astronomy. Is that ever cool?
Yes.
Wow. So did you ever take an interest in that yourself?
Attempted, but didn't get very far. So don't ask me a lot of star questions. I really can't answer very much.
Fair enough. We'll go to him for that then. Cool. It also says in your bio that you were playing under Leonard Bernstein. So can you tell us a bit more about that? How did he work, and how was the experience, and what was the experience?
Sure. So like most music students, when you're in school, you audition for summer music festivals. And in this calendar school year of 1986-87, I auditioned for a summer festival in Salzau, Germany, called the Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival Orchestra. And I was accepted for the first 3 weeks of the festival. I think it was a total of 8 weeks. And the conductor for then was Leonard Bernstein. So, which was an unbelievable opportunity. And so over I went. The biggest piece that we performed with him was The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. And while it has technically difficult flute parts, it's not so difficult that you can't really watch what everyone else is doing and really listen to what the conductor is saying. So it was an absolutely fantastic opportunity to watch him draw out of all of the student musicians exactly what he wanted. And our performances were really something I will never forget.
Oh, wow.
And that was the summer right before I came here. So it's almost like the biggest highlight of my career was before it really started. But,
is that cool? Yeah. That's really cool. He has a certain way of working then, and was he very was he extremely strict? Was he
definitely strict? He knew what he wanted, and he knew that we could all produce it, and so he demanded that we do it for sure. But he had, it's such an earthy piece, and all the feeling that he brought to it, he made us all feel what he was feeling, which is why the performances were so wonderful.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. So another question, being Principal Flute in the ESO, can you tell us a bit more about that? What does it entail? What's expected? How long have you been Principal Flute? How did you become Principal Flute? Were you always Principal Flute? All of that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, sit right back and I'll tell you the tale. So I learned about the opening through my teacher when I was in my master's studies. And the audition was in May of 1987. And so I came up here not knowing anything about Edmonton, and there were 50 of us flute players auditioning for the principal chair because that was the one that was open.
Oh my gosh. From
Shelley
all over? Like not just from Edmonton, but from
It was
all
a North American-wide audition. So they had here in Edmonton, you first have a local round, so people who play in the orchestra or people who belong to the local Edmonton Union can audition first, and then they move to the national level, so anyone across Canada. And I guess they hadn't found anyone, so they opened it up to North America, and that was the round that I was in. So they had two audition panels that heard all of us 50 players over 2 days. And I can't remember how many of us were in the second round, but subsequently second and third rounds. And then I was the only one they wanted to hear in the fourth round, which still doesn't mean you have the job. It just means they want to hear you one last time and listen for things or ask you things. But then they accepted me into the orchestra, for which I was very happy. And that was Mother's Day. So I gave my mother the present of no more student loans to repay.
Nice.
So I started playing here in August of 1987. First concert was an outdoor concert, and have been playing ever since, however many years that is. I've had 2 years off during that time, 1 year for maternity and 1 year just as our son was going into junior high, just to help with the transitional year. But otherwise straight on through. So we are a what's called a B-sized orchestra. So we have 56 players, full-time players, and we bring in other musicians when needed for whatever music we're playing. But what this means for most of the musicians is that, unlike bigger orchestras, we don't get time off during the season. So we pretty much play everything. So it's not like in a bigger orchestra where you might have 4 players or even 3 that, say, the principal player could take a piece or 2 off a concert and rest a little bit. We have to play straight on through.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a demanding job, but a wonderful job.
Excellent. So it's definitely 100% full time. This is yeah.
Well, for the months we play, so in general, the symphony starts in the end of August, and our first performances are for a festival called Symphony Under the Sky, which usually takes place in Horlack Park. That's in a little bit of flux right now because the park has booted us out for triathlon and some other things. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like when we go back after COVID, but that's when we usually start, and then we pretty much go straight through about mid-June, and then we have about 2.5 months off in the summer.
Okay. Oh wow. How would you say that you practice?
Well, that's a big if. So during the symphony season, time is really tight. So we have so many performances per week and so many rehearsals per week. So practice time for me really has to be with a lot of intent and very focused. It's not a relaxed hours long kind of thing. I just don't have that energy or the time because there are other things in life that have to be done, unfortunately. So I don't really have a routine per se. It almost feels a lot like I just grab practice time here and there. And if I feel I need to focus my sound, I'll just work on some tone development, beautiful melodies. Or if I feel like my tongue really needs to get moving, then I'll do tonguing exercises. And of course, always in my mind is what are we playing on the concerts coming up? What do I really need to be on top of in terms of any part of technique or music or phrasing or anything like that?
And as far as the music that you have from the ESO, is it a repetition of music from your past, or is it new music? You know, do you have to learn new music over and
Well,
over?
now I'm starting to feel a little old, Zoe, but yes, there are definitely repetitions. You go through the Beethoven symphonies, the Brahms symphonies, and other big symphonies, and concertos and overtures. We repeated opera. We do Nutcracker every year. So there are some things that either come back cyclically or are repeated. But also with every new music director that comes in, they bring their own specialty. So suddenly we're with Alex Pryor, who's our present chief conductor. He likes a lot of contemporary music. So there's definitely a lot of things he brought that I've never played before. And with every other music director that's been there, they like to do certain things, and so you sometimes get the opportunity to repeat those if they are around for many years.
Does that make it easier? Does that make it easier if you kind of know what you're playing, or
in you know what to expect? So in that regard, yes. If you can remember from the previous time, you certainly can anticipate problem areas or areas that go smoothly, or who you really have to listen to play with, things like that. Whether the music itself gets easier sort of depends on the piece.
Okay, thank you. And what is the best thing you've ever learned from a teacher or a mentor? Or
you know what, I'm going to say everything.
okay.
In my experience, I had the best teachers at the best time for me. I everything they gave me, well, of course, in the beginning when you started to learn, you didn't really know any better, and you just learned whatever they threw in front of you. And then as I started to know more, I recognized how I really had to, in music school, go back to some things I had learned and learn them in a more mature way. And yeah, I just really had the right teacher at the right time.
Awesome.
And I guess maybe something else they really taught me is that it's really wonderful to go listen to other instruments. So go to that Barry saxophone recital, go to that violin string quartet concert, go to a blues concert, go to anything, and listen and watch and learn as much as you can to fully enjoy the experience. So I think that really helped open my eyes to a lot of things that they couldn't just teach in the practice room.
Interesting. That's really good advice too. Yeah. So to hear their musicality and their take and their angle on a certain piece with a different instrument, you know. So yeah,
exactly.
That's good advice. Let's see. I think we're coming up to our last questions here.
Already?
Yeah, already. That was not very long at all. So yeah, the last question I have is, I think that's the last question. Best thing you ever. Oh no, second last question. Do you have any tips or tricks or anything that you've learned, or any kind of things that most flute players or even beginner flute players might not know?
You know, I wasn't really taught sort of tricks or ways to get around things. It was more expected that you play the proper way and that sort of thing. But there are things like slightly alternate fingerings in the high register to play pianissimo very nicely and confidently and comfortably. That's probably the most tricky, if one can say that, that I was ever taught. And I'm always surprised, certainly have a few friends and colleagues who know some tricks, and they sort of say, why aren't you playing it this way? And I think, oh, that's a really wonderful thing. And so maybe I wasn't ready to learn those things when I was a student, but it's always very interesting to me what other people are doing in that regard.
Cool. Okay. And the last question is, what is something people don't know about you?
So I knew you were going to ask that question, so I thought about that. Could I say two things?
Absolutely.
Okay. The first one is that I was one of the musicians who played at Wayne Gretzky's wedding
Ah,
eons ago, and that was very cool.
that is super cool.
And the second thing is that I was able to release a rehabbed snowy owl into the wild.
Oh my goodness. That's a brilliant, brilliant thing. So how did you come about doing that? Tell us more about that.
I
To
found out
be a
about
live owl. Like,
yes,
right?
I found out about an organization out here in Strathcona County called the Alberta Society for Injured Birds of Prey. I can't remember anymore how I found out about them, but I visited their. I don't think it was a school trip, but I can't remember why I was there anymore. But as I looked around, I thought, well, this is a place I'd like to donate money to. It's a very worthy cause, and I'd like to support it. So I started just donating, and then out of the blue, they just called and they said, well, you've been donating for so long. How would you feel about releasing a bird? And I said, I would love it. And they said, really? And I said, that would be fantastic. I said, can I bring some friends? And they said, really? And so we went out into the country, and it was a snowy owl that they had rehabbed. And I had brought about eight or 10 friends along. And got to
Oh my
hold it on
goodness.
my arm and give it a little push, and off it went. And that's probably the most wild look I've ever seen in an animal's eyes. It was purely wild.
Mm-hmm.
There's no connection with humans or anything like that. No romantic notions there. It was just, it does what it does. And
Did it look like it was ready to go? Like that was it?
oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
it
good.
flew away
That's
wonderfully.
That's good news.
Oh yeah, they had rehabbed it very well. I can't remember what they said had happened, but someone in Alberta had called them, and they had picked it up, and they had rehabbed whatever needed to be done. And,
Thank you. That's a great story. Yay. Awesome. Okay, that is us for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome.
And I'd also like to thank the Alberta Arts Foundation for supporting the EFA and for all that they do for us. Great. That's us for today, and I'll close it there.
Thanks, Zoe.
Okay, thanks.